It's 4:03. Thank you all for coming, and I'd like to welcome you and say Happy New Year. Thank you. This is officially our January meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. Members are all present. We are expecting Bruce shortly. I think everyone has been provided the minutes and has had a chance to review them. Any corrections or questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve? Second. Any other discussion? Not? We're set. There's Bruce. We're just a minute into it, Bruce. Okay. So you're all right. Jeffrey, would you please give an update of the financial status of the ICA?
Absolutely. So this is the report for January 22nd, 2020. And I don't need to distribute it, so I'm going to keep one and pass it around. You will notice that we had a number of regular expenditures, nothing out of the usual compared to our usual month. The one unusual item that I will draw your attention to is that at the end of our meeting last time in December, we did finally receive our year 2 allocation from the Department of Community and Economic Development. So that is reflected in our updated balance for our account. Our starting balance at the beginning of the month was $36,468.15, whereas our ending balance was $129,110.71, reflecting that large $100,000 revenue item. We have 75 cents of interest earned. If anybody else has any questions about the expenditures or the revenue, please let me know. Otherwise, this will be reflected as part of today's minutes.
We may want to find another account to put some of that money in as well to get a little bit more interest.
If we spend it, it goes down quickly. We do get interest, but it's just an interest-bearing.
Good money
Yeah.
account.
It's not a good investment.
Yes.
Arbitrage rule says we're not supposed to make more than the interest rate available commercially, so otherwise you'd have to give it to the IRS.
Yeah.
So.
Any questions for Jeff? All right. We'll move on to the chair's report and then right into the update on the intergovernmental agreement. As we know, the city's budget was passed the night before our December meeting. And we had I think a robust conversation at that meeting talking about all the different things that had happened from the AMBEC negotiation to the FOP negotiation, the agreement with Stilton, and the budget itself. I think we had mentioned that we benefited from really being able to attend the workshops and educate ourselves and become much more fully versed in what was going on with the budget in the city. We had sent a letter to the mayor after the meeting just talking about some of the follow-up things that we would like to see. Most of them had to do with calculating year-out calculations, so seeing what impact they might have in the years and in the subsequent years, and that obviously is going to be reflected in the 5-year financial plan that gets completed this first half of the year. We also noted that while we didn't have the opportunity to work with the city and the mayor on the development of the 2020 budget, we certainly look forward to collaborating earlier and more often on the 2021 budget. And then finally, we stress that community and economic development remains the priority for the ICA. Last week, we also received the 4th quarter report by Marita Kelly, the city's recovery coordinator. And despite the fact that DCED has suspended all contracts of the Act 47 consulting team, Marita continues her conversations and oversight of the city's progress. Her report echoes many of her prior reports and continues to recognize the forward movement of the city. As a board, we continue to work collectively on our spring projects, the Economic Development Conference, and our listening sessions. In addition, we are all working to meet and engage important stakeholders who will join us as allies in helping to assist the city of Harrisburg as we move forward. And I don't think we've met anyone who hasn't been willing to jump in, feet first and knee deep. So we're excited about that. I wanted to share a quick update on the status of the agreement, and we've emailed a bit about this. The city delivered a draft of the agreement to the ICA that they represented as wholly acceptable to us last week on January 14th. This was in response to the draft that the ICA had delivered to the city on August 26th, which we felt was wholly acceptable. We have committed to sharing a response to the city by the end of next week, January 31st, and hope that they in turn will be able to respond with comments within 2 weeks of that by February 14th. At that time, I anticipate we can schedule a joint session with the attorneys and the leadership of the city and the ICA to meet and finalize the agreement for signature. This would put us on track to have a final version to approve on February 26th, which is our next meeting. Did I miss anything? Or anybody have any questions? I think it's doable, and I think it's a good next step. Hearing no questions, let's move to the meat of the meeting. I'm delighted to finally have met Sheila Balfour, the Executive Director of Impact Harrisburg. Heard a lot about her, and we're delighted that she's able to join us today. She is the Executive Director. I can't remember if I mentioned that. Our colleague, Doug, serves on Impact Harrisburg as the Vice Chair, and Neil serves as the Chair. I enjoyed reading Impact Harrisburg's mission statement, as it so beautifully echoes the priorities of the ICA. To quote, "We provide grants for city economic development and infrastructure projects that bolster Harrisburg's tax base, provide jobs for city residents, and positively improve the operational efficiency of the city." I think those are worthy challenges that you've undertaken. So with that, Sheila.
Where would you like me to sit?
I think you can sit right there.
Be happy to. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for the opportunity to be here today. I have a fairly substantive PowerPoint presentation, but my board finance chair, Mr. Hill, said that it's probably best to go through only some of the slides. I brought six of these with me, so please feel free to share. And let me apologize to the representatives of the city who are here. You've seen much of this information before, and I will, of course, be happy to send an email to all of you with the slide presentation afterwards. But I think it's important that everyone has an opportunity to see what it is we're watching, okay? Okay, all right, thank you. And Madam Chair, thank you for that really wonderful introduction that really talks about the mission and the vision of Impact Harrisburg. And if I can beg your indulgence for just a few moments, what I'd like to do is just go over some of the high points of what we've done, some of the opportunities we've had. I use that term in the business sense, meaning the challenges, and what we intend to do as we move forward. Without further ado, we'll just move very quickly through this slide presentation. First of all, let me talk about your three themes, as I understand them: sound financial management and reporting, community and economic development, and operational excellence. I have to say that I think they dovetail very neatly in a sort of an interesting Venn diagram way with the mission and vision and goals of Impact Harrisburg. So I do see that there are some real, there's some real synchronicity around the work that you're doing, and as an oversight board, I would imagine, and the work that we're doing on the ground in terms of looking at what the Harrisburg Strong Plan wanted, what its vision was, and how we've been able to, I'm going to talk about how we've been able to take that vision and to implement it. So that's what we're going to do. Let me start by talking about the board members we have in place. There's Neil Grover, who's our board chair, who is of course here today as the city solicitor. There's Brian Hudson, who is the current executive director of the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, and that's for only a few more days. Brian has has had a long and illustrious career at PHFA and has done a lot of good work around not only this city but this nation, and this, most particularly the state, around developing affordable housing and creating access to affordable housing in communities across the state. He's our recording secretary. Of course, Doug Hill is our, who's recently retired, and is serving as the interim treasurer and the first vice president. I put the word interim in quotes because, because he's been there for about a year or so in that capacity, and has really done a wonderful job of keeping us on the straight and narrow when it comes to accountability around financials. That is an area in which, at the outset, the board said it gave just the highest level of priority, and it really, with the oversight of Doug and his predecessor, Brittany Brock, who is a vice president at M&T Bank but has since left the board, we really have been able to really, I think, maintain some good standards around accountability. I'm proud to say that we just received a clean audit for the past fiscal year, and this is, we've had clean audits for the previous years, and that is something we're proud of. The board, as I said, really does take a strong interest in looking at where every dollar is spent, and we thought that that was a signal piece of what we were doing as we rolled out the projects. Lawyer Martin Roberts, who's a former chair of City Council, is a second vice president with Impact Harrisburg. Carl Singleton, who's the former senior advisor to Mayor Pappenfuss, is a board member. I mentioned Brittany Brock. Dale Lanninga, who was retired from the Department of Aging and who is a volunteer in the community, is also on our board. And Russ Montgomery, who is a retired developer and who also worked for the state for many years and is a retiree of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is also a member of our board. So moving forward, we talked about what we are. We were established, as you know, under the STRONG plan to help develop those economic development opportunities. I know there has been a lot of discussion and perhaps debate, and I don't think this is the time or place for that, certainly the question has been asked, why develop a board, a body such as ours? I think that in talking to the individuals who, this goes back some time, but the individuals at DCED who worked to put this together, and I've known many of them for a number of years, the sense was that we needed a separate entity to really engage the community around some of those boots on the ground kinds of initiatives that would really have an impact on the city's infrastructure. And we'll talk about that. I mean, economic, social, racial, all of those variables that have served as challenges to Harrisburg. The sense was that we should develop a body, and I have to say that it was, in fact, it was a test protocol. So I would leave it to you to judge. I know how I think we've done, but I would leave it to you all to judge what your assessment is of what we've done. So we provide grants for economic development and related activities that benefit the city. The vision at the outset was to leverage our dollars, that was about $12.3 million, with other funds to create a maximum impact. What do we want to impact? The city's tax base, the real estate earned income and other taxes, jobs for city residents, and we wanted to improve the city's operational efficiency. Once again, it dovetails neatly with what you've identified. Some really quick highlights. I'm going to talk about that $12.3 million. That, by the way, was set aside as a part of the parking transaction back when the city was experiencing fiscal insolvency and was under a strong Act 47 oversight structure. And once again, we have, at this point, we have awarded about $9.9 million to about 14 grants projects. I say 14 because we have a couple of projects with the city. And I'd like to talk about those. But before we get there, I want you to know kind of how we got to where we are. So we have that 9-member board. Our law firm is Ms. Wallace & North. We have an auditing firm we use. We have an accounting firm. We use Fulton Bank as our depository. We use Wilmington Trust as our investment advisors, and they provide us with fund allocation strategies, of course, and we meet with them on a semi-annual basis at the very least. We have a very small office, I would call it a closet, that's fine, at Midtown, that's fine, because the objective is to be out and about and to see how those projects are doing. And we also have a regular meeting spot. We have a place to meet, and that is Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. Brian has been very kind to give us a permanent meeting space, so we meet there. I want to take a moment, I tend to do this, and applaud my board for very early on. When we were developing criteria for grant awards, they met twice a month for 2 years, I think it was, nearly 2 years, to make sure that they put to bed, and they know, they've heard this before. But I'm not buttering them up, I'm telling you what they did because of their commitment to this project and to this city, to the initiative, twice a month. That is, I have served on many boards, I have served in many capacities. I have never seen that level of commitment from a volunteer board, and I cannot give them enough credit for really showing that level of just fortitude and just mission orientation. So, I talked about who we are. I also want to talk about the Department of Community and Economic Development. How did we get here? Well, what we did is, in terms of actually putting together the template, we started from scratch. We had help, we had resources, but we had to do it. Before they hired me, the board did quite a bit of this. So the infrastructure, what I mean is the structure of the organization was largely in place. I then worked with DCED to develop a uniform grant application of what we would call a shell agreement that we used with all of our grantees save one, and that is the Community First Fund. We'll talk a little bit about that because that was a special one. That was a loan program that we established, and we'll talk about that. We also, at the behest of the board, which I thought was a wise decision, we retained 2 compliance professionals. One is Larry Siegel, who was with PA Impact Strategies, who served with the department in the Department of Community and Economic Development for a number of years, and has a real clear and kind of present skill set around not only economic development but projects, and so he brought that to bear. And we also had Milligan and Company LLC, and they are a minority firm out of Philadelphia, and I want to stress the importance of diversity to us, and so we brought Milligan in to actually work with me and Larry around detailing every dollar that was spent. We thought that accountability, once again, was important, and to ensure that our grantees understood that we were serious about really valuing their projects and helping them, also providing technical assistance to them around getting the projects done in a way that was thorough and efficient. So we talked about those 14 projects. Going to go through those. I should mention that 10 projects are fully complete at this juncture. A couple are in the stages, the last stages of completion. We're very pleased and proud, though, that we have 10 projects that are complete. I have a list of who they are. I'm just going to walk through. I have guiding principles for us. I won't go through those. I talk about the Impact Harrisburg programs. 2 main program categories: infrastructure and economic development. And you'll see subcategories under those 2 main categories. The large economic development projects, that was to help, I'm just going to sort of read this, to redevelop the larger problem or blighted properties in the neighborhood of business districts in this city, and to jumpstart activities on those larger projects. Let me talk about that a little bit. We've had some interesting projects. Probably the one that has garnered the greatest interest and sort of bang for the buck, as it were, is the TLC one, which is using the old Hamilton Health Center and really retrofitting that and building it out. That was a vacant and blighted building. It was around 4th and Minnick Street. And TLC Construction has not only, we gave them a $500,000 grant, they were able to leverage that grant with dollars from DCED, from PHFA, and from other sources, which is the objective, and to take that building and to use a portion of it's on the tax rolls, a portion of it is not because it has a nonprofit component to it as well. But what is interesting is that it really has helped to reinvigorate that area. It took a blighted property that was just vacant and sitting there and said, now it houses various activities. Also, what it also helped to do, if you will, was to just the opportunity to be there helped the owners of that building to really reinvigorate that entire block, because of course veteran housing went in right next door by the same developer. That's what you want to see, I think. That is I would say that has, I feel very good that we were a part of that project. We provided a lot of technical assistance. This was sort of new to the developer. I talked about Larry Siegel's expertise. He brought that to bear. We spent a lot of time in there, and it was fun, and we were glad when they had their groundbreaking. And so I would encourage you all to go up and visit. They like to have visitors. So that's one. You've been there, I'm sure, Tina, right? Yeah. So everyone calls it the old Hamilton Health building. Okay. So that's what we do. That's one project. I'll talk about one other project, and that is the Paxton Homes. That's the one over on Paxton Street, and it's Paxton Ministries developed. It's low-income senior housing. And we provided they asked for $100,000, so we gave it to them. And what they've done with that, though, is to build, they use that for site planning, development work. And they have a multi-million-dollar project there for low-income senior housing. It is, I think, the first of its type. Mr. Pappenfuss was at the groundbreaking, along with others, the first of its type in the city. It puts, once again, properties back on the tax rolls. That's what you're looking for. We're pleased and proud to have been a part of that project. Another one is Web Page FX on Front Street, which, was always, just has grown by leaps and bounds. We gave them $500,000, which they leveraged to buy the property next door. They had a presence on Front Street. They needed to expand. That's what we like to hear about what's happening in the city. They needed to hire more of those folks who were coming in and looking for jobs. And so they asked us for resources. We went out, we worked with them, and we're pleased to say that one of the expectations they had, because we did ask all of the potential grantees, what are your expectations? How will you leverage these dollars? And they said that they would create 100 jobs within, I think it was a period, don't quote me on this exactly, but I think it was 2 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years. They did that in about a year and a half or so. That's what we need to hear about. I would encourage you to visit webpage FX. That's the way we have been able to really effectively leverage our dollars. But not only on that side of the equation, that's sort of on the economic development side, but on the community building side, I'm obviously very excited about these projects. On the community building side, we also have a couple of projects that really, I think really, all of them are special. But there's the Salvation Army project, and that of course is their move from Green Street over to 29th and I want to say Derry, but it's not Derry, it is Rudy Road. Rudy Road. Rudy Road. And that was to really expand their facilities in a way that will help address some of the unmet needs of our sort of the ones in our community who need resources the most. Let me frame it that way. And if you haven't been there, I would encourage you to go there. They were able to also to obtain tax credit dollars or resources, and they were able to leverage just a whole series of just dollars, including using a significant capital campaign component. And it is, and it's just a great project. It's also a lot of fun to go visit them. And then there is the Camp Curtin YMCA, you know, the Camp Curtin in that section of the city. And with that project, that started out as a $250,000 project. The CEO there indicated that they wanted to expand their project a bit more. So what we did was to give them $500,000, and what that $500,000 enabled Camp Curtin YMCA to do was to not only fill in a swimming pool that needed tremendous work and was essentially taking up space in an area they needed to help the children in the community, to provide space in the community. But as important, it enables them to use that space to raise dollars. So they use it as a revenue generator because they lease the space out. So there's additional leverage. That's what we were looking for. And it really does generate what I would say, as I've heard it, you know, a fairly significant amount of revenue. That's what you want to hear. Okay. Let's move on. Any questions so far? So that's the large economic development projects, community building program. One of the community building programs we have is, I want to talk about a couple actually that we have. One in particular though which is Tri-County Community Action Commission. That's up on Derry Street, and that is a facade improvement program, and we're very excited about that. You know that area, 13th Street, I know Tina Nixon's very familiar with that area, and 13th Street going up to 17th, 18th Street. And that project has not yet started. It is expected to start in the spring. There are a number of businesses there, small businesses, and they need to be just lifted up a little bit. You know, they need facade improvement. Facade improvement is really important to communities. It's very interesting. It has streetscaping is very important to communities. That falls under that sort of broader ambit of streetscaping. And so we're really anxious and excited about helping them with that and working with the landlords and the business owners around that. So that will start this year. It's like the DCD Main Street and Elm Street program, similar to those programs. So then moving on, let me just say this, in the community building program, the maximum grant amount is $350,000. For the large economic development projects, the maximum grant award was $500,000. The infrastructure projects, I'm sort of moving through quickly. So these were projects that we funded, actually, that were really intended for two main recipients, I must say. Those are the City of Harrisburg and Community Region Water. And so, well, Capital Region Water, rather. And so we actually, at the board, I think, was very wise in deciding to take the monies, the dollars that were in that fund, because they essentially decided at the outset to take the 12 million or so that was there and split it in two, between those two categories of funding, community and infrastructure and economic development. Infrastructure, economic development. It took the infrastructure project funding and decided that the multimodal collaborative project, which is the project that the city, I'm sure, has talked to you about, all of that deferred maintenance around the roadways, and it is a multi-year project, and it involves 2nd Street and 3rd Street, and Bruce and others here can, I mean, they know this project like the back of their proverbial hand. We decided that was very important, that we wanted to have a collaborative project that in which both the city and Capital Region Water could share in terms of responsibility, once again, and accountability, because the project required both to be a part. So we provided a total shared award of $5.5 million for that project. So that was 2.7 for each grantee. That project, phase one of that project is pretty much done. The parties, Capital Region Water and the city, are working out some of the allocation details. We work with them. I think that they've done a wonderful job, and we look forward to, we have allocated funding, which what I would call in my language is, we've encumbered funds for phase two, a portion of phase two. So we're ready to use those funds. The city has talked to us about their diversity component on that. We're working with them around getting those numbers improved because we think that's important. It's an engagement, it's a process. It's a process, that's what happens when you talk about those issues. You have to just keep pushing forward. But that's what you need, it's that kind of engagement. So that's what we're doing there. On infrastructure contingency, which are infrastructure-related emergency needs that cause stresses on the city's general fund. I thought you would want to know this. We did provide $250,000 to the city as a Microsoft 365 award. The city was needed resources to upgrade its computer, its software, and so we provided $250,000 for that. And then moving on, just about done. Giving you just the highlights of what we've been doing. Our project status. We began making awards in late 2016. The projects began in 2017. As of December 2019, 10 projects fully complete, 3 projects close to completion, multimodal phase 2 in progress, and we're discussing a second round of funding. The board wants to talk about what do we do with the remaining funds. If you move forward, you will see this is what we've done thus far. Community building grants. I have a matrix of sort that shows you the projects and where we are. Yours looks better than mine. I'm just saying, mine is not in color. Okay. It's okay. That's okay.
Sheila, I have a question.
Yes.
The Tri-County Housing Development, that project, does that include parking, developing a parking space, parking lot?
No.
Okay.
No. It didn't. It was, those were houses on, street, right off of Derry Street, 14th and Derry. Somehow I'm blocking the name of the street, but it's that beautiful side street that comes up. I can't think of the name of the street.
Vernon?
Hummel Street, Hummel Street.
Okay.
It was the Hummel Street, and so it's that. So it involves, but it's housing. It's building a couple of houses on Hummel Street. So that was that building project, but no parking.
Okay, so was that in collaboration with the Brethren project, the Brethren Homes?
As I recall, the Brethren Homes had was a contributor and/or co-developer of that project.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that project is complete.
Okay.
Yes. And they're a good partner in that community, in that area, as you know. Mhm. And then if you move to the next page, we have the large economic development projects, 2.9 million, and city playground resurfacing, 3 of the 4 are complete. That's a pretty cool project because it really is about putting in permeable playground surfaces that are sort of environmentally sound, and it's just nice. And it's nice to walk on, and it's for kids, so, right. The redevelopment authority, that's for the demolition of houses that need to be torn down, essentially, and that's ongoing. So we've allotted $500,000. It's ongoing. They've spent about half of that. That's a guesstimate. I know what the number is. I have a chart with it, but this is about half of that. Harrisburg River Rescue, that was to build out. They had moved and they needed to build out a facility to house some of their equipment. So we gave them the money. It's done. Paxton Street Homes, we talked about that. Salvation Army, TLC Construction, Webpage FX, and the YMCA Camp Curtin. So we have talked about all of our projects thus far, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
I think you were going to say something about Community First.
Oh yes, I was. Thank you. So Community First Fund, we developed the Harrisburg Business Opportunity Fund in conjunction with Community First Fund and nonprofit arm of the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, the Commonwealth Cornerstone Group. I had to think about how to frame it appropriately. And we put together, and we actually provided $350,000. Commonwealth Cornerstone Group provided $650,000. That was about 2 years ago, approximately, give or take a few months. And since that time, the board has decided, and in tandem with the Commonwealth Cornerstone Group, to actually have our money pulled out so that we have more money to use to fund grant projects as we move forward. And Commonwealth Cornerstone Group has actually replaced our 350 with its own 350. So they have fully funded the amount of $1 million. And Community First Fund also has contributed to the fund as well. So that the objective is to make loans primarily to minority development projects in the city. And which means development projects by minorities within the city, as we, broadly defined. And we track the progress up. We have tracked the progress. We get quarterly reports. We have been from Community First Fund. We thought that project was real important. It's really different from some of the other projects, obviously. And the loans are from an interest rate perspective, they are lower than the rates that the awardees would be able to, the lendees, as it were, would be able to obtain if they were to go into the kind of traditional capital marketplace. And so they're at about 4 to 5%. So that's actually, in today's environment, you might not think it's actually pretty good for some individuals. And so I could name a few of the recipients, and without doing that, let me just say it has proven thus far to be a real opportunity for us to really create space within the larger community for a variety of businesses. And so we, meaning the board and I, thought that was an important initiative, and we look forward to seeing this continue to grow that space.
Sheila?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's for the entrepreneurs that are engaging in, are there educational opportunities to help walk them through the process? Is that a component of funding?
It is. Thank you for asking that. It is. That was a much discussed part of this project. I'm talking about the Harrisburg Business Opportunity Fund. We've worked with the city around developing access to, once again, to the education. We've worked with the Regional Chamber of Commerce. We've worked with some of the incubators around, the business incubators that are around, that some of the schools have. Millersville has one, and so we've been able to, and some other entities. We've worked with this, actually with the Small Business Administration. We've talked to all of those actors and worked to kind of build, let me just step back and say, I'm going to use jargon, but the idea of building capacity takes time. So this is a sort of a longer haul. If you're building a building, you can see it. This is something that has a longer, the continuum for this, these initiatives are longer, and the educational process, some people get it early on, some people know just what they want, and they don't need much technical assistance. Others are saying, we're just starting out, and we need some help. And so the idea was to be able to meet those entrepreneurs where they were. And it is, I would say we've had mixed success, but we continue to work towards building that capacity. And we would look for partnerships around that. Although that is not a part of our original mission, it is something I would say that we've taken on so that my board, when we get back, I don't hear from board members saying, really? But the answer is, it really does fit in. I think it's a nice, I would say it's not at all tangential. It is a component of what it is we have to do. And it's something that, I mean, Tina raises a really good point, because when we started this, we didn't know that we would have to address that issue. I don't think one knows, with anything, exactly what the challenges are going to be. That's a real challenge for the city. I mean, when I say the city, I mean the small city, not the city proper. And it is something that we all need to really engage in. Tina, I'm sure because of your expertise, the work you've done, you understand and appreciate the need for a lot of critical thinking around that. And so we are one of the few participants, not many yet, but I think that number needs to grow. There needs to be a lot of intellectual energy, there need to be resources and accountability around that. Other questions? Be happy to answer any other questions. Yes,
sir.
Bart.
So how much funding is left currently?
Yep, so we have about $2.5 million left.
Does it fall specifically under one of the two categories?
Well, it sort of does, but we're working out the details of how we'll manage that going forward. The board is, the board is looking at how, which is within its discretion, how it wants to sort of allocate that. It doesn't have, it has not, when I said at the outset that we're looking at a second round of funding, we are at the preliminary stages. So we have a board meeting scheduled for the 28th, at which that will be a part of the discussion. And so it's a good question. We'll know more after the 28th.
So prior to the 28th, do you have any formal plans to disperse the remaining funds, and any indications to how fast you'll be able to disperse it?
Well, so I would say that it is the consensus of the board, without getting too far ahead. That's rule number one, never get too far ahead of your board, right?
Especially when they're sitting in the...
No, I know. Thank you, that's right, that's first of all, okay. There may be a priori, but anyway. So the answer is that I would say that it is the consensus of the board to go out with the second round of funding. But there has not yet been a vote on that. And there is no definitive answer as to when that will happen. I will tell you that the board will, we've done it once before, and once you have, you've traversed that road, it gets a little bit, I'm not going to say easier, but you've built some capacity around doing it. So presumably it will happen much faster than the first time. So we're looking at within the next 6 months.
I have this is sort of all versions of the same question. Does Impact Harrisburg take into account the city's priorities when it's talking about economic development?
Well, we, that's a really good question.
Or is it more independent?
I would say that we are independent, but we have always worked to foster a good working relationship. Communication is what we do. And you have to talk to. This only works if you talk. I don't know how else to put it. You have to communicate with your partners, and we see the city as a partner, Ralph, in everything that we do. We did initially actually provide funding for the comprehensive plan. I think this predates my tenure with Impact Harrisburg. I think it was about, I want to say $250,000. I could be wrong, someone can spell me on that, but doing this off the top of my head now. But so we work with the city around, not in a formal, structured way. We don't have meetings scheduled, once a month where we sit down and go over templates and plans and strategies. But I do provide updates to the board. I've met with Bruce many times. I've met with the chief of staff many times. So and of course we have members of our body who also serve in leadership capacities at the city. So the idea of a great deal of transparency is very important to us.
If the ICA has priorities that are really similar and similar focus to Impact Harrisburg's, would you be interested in, would there be opportunities for the ICA to support programs or initiatives that we thought in our, in our intergovernmental cooperative opinion would be great uses of funding?
I think that my
Would we be able
board
to help
is,
you and partner with you that way?
I think that my board is open to, absolutely open to partnerships. And I will say this about my board. I have served in, I said this at the outset, I've served in many capacities since I've been here 25 years now, and a lot of people, I mean, it's a small town. I have served on many boards, and in many, I've served as a member, as a leader, just in many capacities. It is a very dynamic board where some of the hard issues that that require discussion in this city have had to take place. And we've done so in a way that has actually, I think, created progress. And it's not always easy. It can be a little painful at times, but you have to have those, we've had to do some of that work. And so there is I would say, a fair amount of push-pull, but they are fiercely engaged in the work. It's not a rubber stamp. So I say that to say that I'm sure that they would welcome an opportunity to meet and to talk with you all and to hear your vision and your mission and see how it kind of dovetails with, with ours, with theirs. I'm the staff. There's a lot that has to be done in this city. And so there has to be, once again, a lot of coordination of effort. If you look at cities where there is progress, okay, it might be slow, but you always see groups of entities that are working in tandem and, to sort of pull in the same direction. And you always see it. I grew up in a big city where I've seen all iterations of the good, bad, and ugly of how you get cities to move. And as I said, I've been here 25 years, and I've worked for a long time for a large organization. You need everybody, the proverbial rolling in the same direction, all right? But you also need people to understand that when you disagree, it has to be based on something that is intellectually and pragmatically sound. And that, and then you have to forge ahead, okay? That's my philosophical statement for that.
Thank you for that.
Madam
You're
Chair,
welcome.
one-
Yes.
Sheila, if I
Yes.
may, I
Yes.
have a couple questions.
Yes.
When your 12.3 is distributed,
Yes.
what happens? Do
Well-
you go defunct? Does any of the money come back to you?
Well, so that's where's the question?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No, that's right. It is a good question. We've talked about that. We've talked about two things, I would say. We've talked about taking the remaining funds and really putting out that second round. But while we are doing that, really examining what is our next step? What's the next iteration of our line as an organization? Because we've sort of built this infrastructure, this framework, so what do we do next? And the board is not quite aligned around that yet. We have had a couple of strategic planning, so we are exploring the possibilities. Because, it seems to work well, and so within that framework, we know that we could, in fact, if we spend down all the resources, one alternative is just to keep Impact Harrisburg as an entity, which is alive without funding, so it becomes a vehicle in case there is additional funding that could be reinvigorated, as it were, and if there are more monies available, because there is, under the strong plan, there is some component that talks about, if there are settlements and certain components of certain pieces of litigation the city is engaged in, that we would be the recipient of some of those funds. So, but who knows? As you know, we don't know if, when, or how, or where, or, So that is totally speculative. You cannot engage in any future planning based around that. So, and I think my board has been wise to say, we're not going to. but they have talked about, how sort of the practical process of kind of winding down and keeping, once again, Impact Harrisburg, with all of the documents in place and just having a volunteer board to kind of sort of maintain that for a while, or maybe sort of transforming into something that is maybe that has a slightly different mission, but we're not sure about that yet. But we are discussing it. I think our first priority, though, is to get this second round out to just really undertake what we see as our mission and sort of undertake the due diligence around doing that. And so, but those are really good questions. And those, I know, I apologize, my answers sounded a little unformed, but we're working, and it's not to say that we haven't discussed those, the sort of what the prospects are. It's just that we are moving in, I'm not sure of the absolute direction, but we are moving. We understand that the reality of that.
You had a follow-up, you had a second
Actually,
question?
we've
Oh, you-
incorporated that, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was a lengthy answer, boy, oh boy. Yes.
No, actually, I have the same question as to what other opportunities there would be to obtain additional funding for Impact Harrisburg. Grants or foundation
Right.
funding, or, would you be interested in seeking that additional funding?
If
to
it
continue the mission?
Well, I think if I came back in 2 months, I could give you an answer. That's a good answer.
That's a great answer.
Sorry.
And I'm
Let me
sure,
not cheer myself too much, though. Go ahead, please.
I'm sure you're willing to accept any emails if we have additional questions.
Oh, please.
Follow up.
I
We
would
think about them
very much welcome
afterwards, then.
the opportunity to provide more information and to come back again. I wanted to just provide sort of an overview of who we are, what it is we do, how we do it, and where we are, sort of where we are at this point, sort of. And I hope you were able to obtain some of that information from this presentation today. Thank you very much.
I feel like we need a road trip. Is what I
I
can
know,
relate
yeah.
to.
That's it.
Let's
What
get a
we do.
van and drive
It's
around
what we
and
do.
get inspired.
We've done it, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really
Okay,
appreciate
you're welcome.
it.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Is there any other, I realize we didn't leave an other business on here before we open up for public comment. Is there anything else, Bruce, anything that's risen to a level that you want to share with us? We've had a whole 22 days in this new year. What's happened?
Yeah, no, nothing that is of, I would
And I
say,
didn't mean to put you on the spot.
immediacy or
Okay.
of concern or,
All right.
Bruce,
know,
or
I mean-
Mayor, are you able to share information on your ongoing search for a new auditor for the city, or is that still?
oh, well, we do have a new auditor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's information, so.
I guess, sure. We don't have the engagement letter yet.
Okay.
It has to go to council and that's in the process, but my absence last time was because we had every 5 years. This was the only second time in that span of this administration where the old auditor contract was up. We did an RFP, it was fairly extensive. We actually got, the last time, no local audit firm outside of the incumbent actually bid on it. This time, all local firms did, which was nice. It was a very collaborative working group between City Council, Treasurer, Controller, Administration, and went through scoring and then interviews with the 3 firms that rose to the top, and ended up picking Boyer & Ritter. They have an engagement letter. It was introduced to council last week. It will be discussed. They can't really do any work until there's a contract, essentially, which the engagement letter is. It will be discussed in committee on February 4th and probably approved on the 11th. It's going to be, it's going to be a challenge for, I think, both entities, meaning the administration as well as Boyer & Ritter, as they're going to have to get up to speed with sort of our environment, and how we do things, and our unique history as every entity's firm is, especially Harrisburg's, with what we went through in 2010 to 2014, which is unique, meaning it's really unusual, and those transactions are something that you have to kind of really absorb yourself in to understand how to account for them, literally and figuratively. Jeff and I had this discussion earlier today in our meeting.
I think new eyes are always good, so hopefully that'll work out well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some of the stuff is what it is.
Right.
It's just the work that has to be done.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
John?
Think to
Okay,
respond.
one of these days we'll get. So I think that concludes our business. Open it up for 10 minutes or so of public comment, if there are any questions, or I should have offered the mayor an opportunity to.
Well, I'm happy to speak under public comment. I do have one comment, and we'd like to, on behalf of the city, I'd like to respectfully but strongly and clearly object to this board's interpretation that certain board members should be excluded from deliberations or executive sessions. On behalf of the city of Harrisburg, we feel that runs contrary to the act under which your board was established. It also runs contrary to basic rules of governance for boards. It's very clear to us that ex officio board members are appointed by virtue of their office. According to Robert's Rules of Order, they are entitled to the same rights and responsibilities of any other board member. And the only way in which those duties are limited would be enumerated in the Act, which means they should be participating in executive sessions. We feel it is actually imperative that they do, and it was the intent of the Act for them to participate, because, especially at this juncture, that input, I think, would be valuable to you, especially as we are working to establish a mutual agreement. I think a framework which excludes them from executive sessions is not only wrong, but it also sets up an oppositional framework rather than a collaborative framework, which is clearly what the Act had in mind. This has been a repeated decision on the part of the board. It's coming to a head now at the executive session this afternoon. I wanted to lodge that objection publicly and for the record, and I hope you will reconsider.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Eric Epstein, Rockford Capital. The mayor anticipated my comments. I strongly support what he just outlined, and I have a number of process issues that I wanted to ask you to potentially address. We'll be filming these sessions from here on out. Rockford Capital is relaunching, and so we'll be filming this session as well as via Electric Control Board, Turnpike Commission, other bodies that are usually inaccessible to the general public. Not lumping them all together, but want to let you know that we will be a permanent feature. That being said, we'd like to request that you have name cards. Nobody really knows who you are.
Oh, sorry.
No, you don't have name cards, and I'm not sure, maybe you can clarify this, has Mr. Shankweiler been replaced?
Yes.
All right. That would have been nice to announce, so we do have a new, I mean, just as we're taping this, when people call in, nobody knows who you are, but who are you?
He's been here for 2
I'm Doug
meetings,
Hill.
sorry.
All right. No, I know you from previous experience, but people watching this likely would not.
Well, this is actually the third meeting I've participated in, so it's been a
Well,
while.
I've seen you, but I haven't, I'm aging, my eyes aren't working. I have two questions. One is, and I don't know if Sheila can answer this, but we did have a blighted property program throughout the county. Maybe Mr. Engel can address this. Is there any way for her organization to plug into that? I know we had it active in Central Office School District, Pembroke, I think Susquehanna, but is there any potential tie?
Did Sheila?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are, Sheila.
I didn't want to, I wanted to defer to your body.
Yeah.
Well, so, do you mind if I come up and respond? Okay, I can talk to you offline about it, I mean, I think
No, I like
that,
it, but, no, this is something that we've tried to do at the school district, is get the properties back on the tax rolls, and probably be good for Harrisburg. I'm just wondering if you're partnering with the county in addition to doing what you're doing.
can you see me, can you hear me?
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Okay, so very quickly, we keep the county apprised of our work as well. One of the objectives of my board has been, at the outset of my tenure, was to direct me to really keep all of the stakeholders apprised of what we do. So I've met with the, not with the county commissioners, but I've met with the with their head of economic development, George Connor and others, and I work closely as well with the housing authority here and the redevelopment authority. And I talk specifically about the work we're doing within the city of Harrisburg.
I just had one question.
No, I know, around, let me just
Okay.
finish. Thank you. Around blighted properties. And
Right.
so we are, in fact, doing, through our grant process, that work. So that is how I would say that we are cooperating and collaborating.
No, the actual question was, are you enrolled in that program? Either some of the school districts and municipalities
We
are.
We are not.
We
Okay,
do
that was all I
not,
asked.
excuse me, we do not enroll in programs. We do not enroll in programs.
Okay.
But I also wanted to explain what it is we are doing around addressing the issue of blight, because that is included in one of the objectives that we have been directed to address.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, final question would be for the solicitor. I know that you may be going into executive session. You've been talking about potential litigation, and I know you can't talk about the litigation, but can you talk about the law firm that may be representing you in the event you have litigation, or will you be the person of record for the authority?
I'm the independent general counsel for the authority,
Right.
and I don't foresee litigation.
Potential.
But there's potential, always a potential for litigation.
But you're having a meeting, so there's a concrete issue that may come before you. And what I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out is, how do you, as an authority, you have a limited budget, so how do you determine who defends you? You do an RFP, you pick a firm, I mean, this is not incidental.
And we would allow Jeff to give us insight, whether it's an issue that he can handle or direct us to who we might, on a finite basis, ask us to help.
On a finite basis.
Well, for that project.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking you is, Mr. Engel's not able to or has to recuse himself, what's your next step? How do you procure legal counsel? I think it's a legitimate question.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, I think Kathy would be able to direct us on that.
Kathy Speaker McNett, I am an attorney with a local law firm, Scarlatus Zonarch. This is not something we have discussed. What we generally would do would be to have an executive session in which we would discuss it, and then after that determine what we wanted to do in terms of securing counsel. So as far as I'm concerned, the question, which is a valid question, is just premature because we haven't gotten to that stage yet.
Yeah,
And I don't
I
know
just
if we will.
respectfully disagree. It's not premature if you have to compensate somebody to provide a service.
But we have at this point nothing for which we would compensate
Yeah, I don't
anyone
want to have a secular
outside of
argument
the...
with you. In the event you do, what I'm trying to figure out is
And
how
I'm
do you
s-
compensate them?
I'm answering you directly that we have not yet determined what we would do at that point.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. So much executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. We will move into executive session immediately, excusing our two ex officio board members.